Greatness is achieved by service. Yes, greatness is achieved by service. And you see, nothing helps refine who you are becoming like service. Great evening, guys. Thank you so much for joining us again on another exciting Upgrade Live with Mr. Upgrade. Yes, I am Mr. Upgrade, and I'm super excited to have you join us again for another exciting life transforming session that we're going to have together. You see, this is the Upgrade Live, and we do this every Sundays, basically from 7 p.m. through to 8 p.m. And we basically get to discuss four things. Yes, we discuss just four things. Number one, we get to take your questions, right? If you have any questions, feel free to send in your questions. We will gladly take them. Number two, we got to share with you the upgrade mastery tip for the week. And for this week, the upgrade mastery tip is service. Yes, there's so much we need to unpack on this conversation on service because there's so much you will learn about service, right? Number three, we got to connect, network, and bond. We understand that in the world that we live in today, connecting, networking, and bonding is very key. So we get to do that because people from all around the world get to watch this. You can get to connect with people from diverse cultures, diverse religion, diverse countries, right? That's the third thing we get to do. We get to connect, network, and bond. And then the fourth thing that we get to do is that we get to have fun. Yes, we got to have fun because I strongly believe that if learning is not fun, there is no learning at all. So we get to have fun while we do the upgrade live that we do. And besides, whatever you learn in full pleasure, you remember in full measure. So we get to have fun while we do all that we do. Okay, so on the upgrade live with Mr. Upgrade, we always begin with basic 5 questions. Now, these 5 questions help us to lay the foundation upon which everything we're going to be discussing will be built, right? So while we wait for your questions to come in, we'll begin with our basic 5 questions to help keep the show on the road, right? So let's begin. Question number one: what is service? What is service? When you hear service, what comes to your mind? What is service, right? You know, people always talk about you need to serve, you need to serve, you need to show that you're a person of service. What actually is service, right? What actually is service? Tell me, when you hear service, what comes to your mind? You know, what comes to your mind when you hear service? You know, for Nigeria, for a Nigerian, so many things come to mind when you hear service. Firstly, yeah, NYSC, National Youth Service Corps, right? Service. You go, when are you going for service and all of that? And then, but also Nigerians hear about service, church service. Which of the service do you attend? First service, second service, third service, fourth service, service. But what exactly is service? We're not talking about the NYSC. We're not talking about the church service. Or we're not talking about the service of song, service of procession, not those kind of service, right? What actually is service? What actually is this thing that is called service? This thing that we say greatness is achieved by service. This thing that we say nothing refines who you are becoming like service. What actually then is service? I'll tell you, right? And this is a definition I came up with. You know, we always come up with our own definitions on the upgrade side of life, right? So you'll not find our definitions anywhere. It's exclusive to us. Now, service is the giving off of yourself faithfully towards the attainment of a goal without expectation of reward. Now, that is service. I'll take that again. Service is the giving off of yourself faithfully towards the attainment of a goal without the expectation of reward. That, my friend, is service. And you look at the key things in that definition of service. It talks about giving off yourself faithfully, not just giving up yourself anyhow, not just giving up yourself in an I don't care manner, giving up yourself faithfully towards the attainment of a goal. So there's a goal that needs to be achieved. And then without the expectation of reward, because we live in a world where everybody seems to be asking, what is the need for me? What do I stand to gain? What do I stand to benefit? But service means that you become selfless. You think less of yourself. Does this make sense? Are you getting this, right? So service is the giving up of yourself faithfully towards the attainment of a goal without the expectation of reward. Question number 2 is, who is responsible for service? Now we know what service is. Who then is responsible for service? The answer is simple. You are responsible for service because it's giving up of yourself faithfully. So you are responsible for service. Question 3, why service? Why do we have to talk about service? Why is service of any importance or of any significance? Why service? And I'll tell you 3 reasons why service. Number 1, for learning. Number 2, for training. And number 3, for maturing. These are 3 reasons why service: for learning. You see, there are some things you would never learn if you don't go through service. There are some things you just cannot learn, right? I know people will say, oh, but the internet is there. There are so many AI tools. I can learn anything. See, there are some things that you just cannot learn if you don't go through service, right? Another reason is for training. Service helps to train you. And I always say this all the time, that those who sweat in training, they don't bleed in battle. Now, through service, you undergo training, right? There's some level of training that only is accessible in service. And that's why you must serve. The one that needs to be great has to serve. There's the training that happens in service. And finally, the third reason why service is maturing. The more you serve, the more you grow, the more you evolve, the more you mature. There's a maturing that happens through service. Over time, there are things that you no longer see yourself doing because you have matured through service. And that's why we highly recommend service for anyone. Go and serve. Go and serve. It is not a waste of time when you serve. It's not. It is a productive use of time when you serve, because there's the maturing that happens to you in the place of service, right? Question number 4. What are the benefits of serving? What do you stand to gain when you are serving? What are the benefits of serving? I'll tell you 3 benefits of serving. Number 1, character development. See, when you go through the process of serving, there is the way your character is developed. There's a way your character is built through the process of serving. So there's character development that happens to you while in service, right? Even scripture tells us that Jesus learned obedience through the things he suffered. There's the character development that happens to you while in service. So the first benefit of service is character development. Your character is built. Your character is developed through the process of service. The second benefit of service is skill refinement. Now, as you serve, whatever skill that you have, that you employ in the service, is refined. Right? Remember, we said that nothing refines who you are becoming like service. So there's this skill refinement that takes place while you're serving. The refinement of your skill happen while you're serving. Are you getting this? So service benefits you. It helps upgrade your skill. It helps refine your skill. It takes you from a disaster to a master as you serve. So your skill moves from being a disaster to being a master while you're serving. So there's skill refinement that happens in service. Benefit 3. The third benefit is there is reward and there's commendation. For every service that you put in, there is a reward. Remember, we said in our definition, it is the giving up of yourself faithfully towards the attainment of a goal without expectation of reward. Now, you don't expect reward doesn't mean there is no reward. I'll say that again. For the fact that you don't expect reward does not mean there is no reward. For every service, there is the reward and commendation, right? The master of the servants in the parable of the talents, he told the first two servants who served, he said, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Come into your rest." So there's reward and commendation that happens when there is service. No service goes unrewarded. That's why scripture tells us that God is not unjust to forget your labor of love. That labor of love is your service. Say, God is not unjust to forget it. He rewards it. He commends it. So there's reward and commendation that happens through service. Question number 5. When is the best time for service? When is the best time for you to serve? When is the best time for service? You know, like I always say, the last best time for service was yesterday. The next best time for service is now. Now is the best time for service. Now the question is, are you ready to be involved in service? Because the truth is, you gain so much more through service than any other thing or any other way. You gain so much more. So service is something that you should consider and get yourself plugged in on. Get yourself plugged in service. Very important, very critical, very vital. Does this make sense? Right? Okay, now let's talk about service itself. Let's break it down. Let's really look at service in detail because we really need to get us to understand all of these things, right? And what it represents, right? Service. 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 What does this represent? Now, you know, we like to break things down so that people can really understand it and be able to run with it. You know, like scripture says, write the vision, make it plain, that they that read it would run with it, right? So we like to break things down so that when you listen, when you watch, it's easy for you to apply, to implement, right? To take action on immediately. Now, so what is service? The S in service is sacrifice. You know, we dealt extensively with sacrifice last week. So in case you missed out on that, go watch that episode on sacrifice. We dealt extensively with sacrifice. But now here's the catch. Every service is an act of sacrifice, which means serving is not going to come from the place of comfort. It's not going to come from the place of ease and convenience. There's going to be sacrifice as you engage in service. You're going to feel like, this is not it as you engage in service. So there's the sacrifice that must be made because of service. I say this sometimes that no great thing ever come out from the seat of comfort, right? There's the level of discomfort that you need for you to thrive in life. And service usher you into that level of discomfort because there's the sacrifice you make. Sacrifice. So the S in service begins with sacrifice. What are you willing to let go because of the service you are a part of? It's a sacrifice. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be convenient, but you will not regret making that sacrifice as you serve. So service begins with sacrifice. The S in service is sacrifice. What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to give your all? Service begins with sacrifice. It begins with sacrifice. So you are not going to truly be able to serve anywhere if you're not willing to make sacrifice. Service starts with sacrifice. Interestingly, we have people today who don't want to serve, but they want to be served. They do not want to make the sacrifice, but they want others to sacrifice for them. That's the order. That's the wrong order for service, because service always begins with sacrifice. Service begins with sacrifice. There's no two way around it. You know, coming up here to do this every Sunday is service, right? And it's also sacrifice. So regardless of the things I may be battling with or dealing with, I have to serve. I have to make the sacrifice. I have to put things together to be able to come and ensure that this happens. Sacrifice. Right? So the S in service is sacrifice. The first E in service is empathy. Now, in a world that we live in today where a lot of people are emotionally unintelligent, you can't truly serve without empathy. Right? Empathy is not the same as sympathy. A lot of people can be sympathetic. They can say, oh, sorry, you're going through XYZ. Sorry, God help you. That's sympathy. But we should be empathetic, being there for them in their trying times, in their down moments, and be there with them till they get back on their feet again and are thriving again. And true service is about empathy, not sympathy. Being there for you, true and true, regardless. That's service, that's empathy. You see what happened to the man from Samaria when he met the man who was beaten and left for dead? He showed service. He demonstrated empathy. He bandaged his wound, gave him first aid, and then took him to an innkeeper. In today's world, we would have taken him to the hospital and made deposits for him. That's empathy. And then told the innkeeper that if he spends all of this, when I come back, I would reimburse it. That's empathy. So he was still coming back. He didn't just say, oh, I played my part and I moved on. No, he still followed up. That's empathy. That is service. So the first E in service is empathy. How much empathy do you have as a person? Or you are just having sympathy? The one who serves doesn't rely on sympathy. The one who serves rely on empathy. Are you understanding this? Right? It's empathy that goes into service. That's what makes the service heartfelt. That's what makes the service humane, because there's empathy. The scripture tells us that we have not a high priest who is not touched by the feelings of our infirmities. He understands what we go through. Even when Peter had gone back to fishing again after the death of Jesus and the resurrection, he went back to fishing. Jesus came to him. Jesus ate with him. Jesus asked a simple question: loveth me not more than this? See, showing Peter empathy. See, 7, showing Peter empathy. He didn't say, oh, after all, you denied me. Now you have gone back to fishing. No. Ate with them and asked the question: don't you love me more than this? Service has the element of empathy, because that's what connects to people. People are not robots. People are human beings with human feelings. And empathy helps you connect to their feelings. And you know, a lot of people are always in their feelings. It takes empathy for you to connect with them in their feelings. You know, when I look through scripture, I see something that God said to Jeremiah in Jeremiah 29:11. You know, when you guys talk about that scripture, you guys always talk about it from the King James Version. It says, "Oh, I know the thoughts that I think towards you are thoughts of good, not of evil, to bring you to an expected end," right? If you look at that same scripture from the Message translation, you could see the empathy that God truly has. He says, "I know what I'm doing. I have it all planned out. I will take care of you. I will not abandon you. I will give you the future that you hope for." Come on, come on. That's empathy at its finest. That's service. The R in service is responsibility. See, anyone who serves takes up the responsibility for service. There's the responsibility you take up. Like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. There's the responsibility for service. And that comes with you knowing that I am in this for the long haul. I'm not in this just for the few times. No, I'm in this for the long haul. I'm in this true and true. I am committed to this because I take this as a responsibility. See, the reason a lot of people many times vacillate between opinions is because they do not take their service as a responsibility. This is my responsibility. This is my work. This is not a job. This is my work. This is what I am designed to do. I take responsibility to serve. I see service from the lenses of opportunity. Service is my responsibility. While others are trying to back out and back down, I stand my ground and say, let's get this done, because I take responsibility for service. You know, I say this all the time that Joseph would not have known the butler and the baker if he didn't take responsibility for service. Because as he served all the other prisoners, even though he was a prisoner, he could notice that they were downcast and they were feeling depressed. And he went to them and asked, "What's the problem? What's the challenge?" And they said they had dreams that they didn't have the interpretation. And he interpreted their dreams and it came to pass. Taking responsibility. Taking responsibility. Service is about taking responsibility. Things would work while I am there. And even when I'm not there, I would have set up structure that ensure that things still work in my absence. That's responsibility. And that's service. The V in service is value. Value. The value that you bring to the table. And I've always said this, that value is anything that is beneficial, that is of help, and that's a solution. Service must be value. Right? Your service must be value. It must be beneficial. It must be of help. It must be a solution. It must be value. It's not just serving for serving's sake. There must be value. Of what benefit is your service? Of what help is your service? Of what solution is your service? Service must be value. You know, Potiphar took note of Joseph, that his house was being blessed because of Joseph. That's value. The prison warden took note of Joseph, that Joseph was able to manage the prison and put him in charge. That's value. Pharaoh saw how Joseph was able to interpret the dream and the implementation he had for the dream. He put him in charge. Your service must be giving value. It must be giving the vibes of value. You know, Gen Z will talk about vibes. It must be giving the vibes of value, beneficial, of help, a solution, that kind of vibes. So your service must be value. The I in service is intentional. You must be intentional about service. It's not here and there. You must be intentional about service. Service must be intentional. It's not going to be haphazard. It's not going to be done anyhow. It has to be intentional. Intentional in serving people. Very intentional. Because I tell people all the time that your service to humanity is not only when you become a philanthropist, so you have enough money to spend around. No, no, no. From your little actions every day, you're being intentional with your service. Your little thank you, your little help, your little sacrifice you're making. Those are intentional acts of service. You know, they say people should do random acts of service. I always feel don't do random acts of service. Rather, do intentional acts of service, because service has to be intentional, not random. Not random. Service has to be intentional. Why? Because service is not a one-off. Because most of the random acts of service are one-off. Service should be intentional, consistent. The C in service is character. Nothing builds character like service. Like nothing. Nothing comes close. Nothing refines you like service. So character building, character development, character involvement is a key portion of service. Because as you give of yourself to help others, you're learning something about you. See, the truth is human beings are, what's the word? Are innately self-centered. Like being self-centered comes with the package of a human being. It comes with the package, the default packaging. But through service, you are giving of yourself. You are refining your character. You are not becoming like everybody else who always want to get all they can and can all they get. No, you're becoming different because your character is changing. Your character is evolving. Your character is maturing through service. Because that's why Joseph could look at his brothers down the line and said, "You meant it for evil, but God turned it around for good." His character has evolved through service. And notice this whole story of Joseph took over 22 years. 22 years. His character has been changed through service. Because all through those 22 years, Joseph was consistently, intentionally serving. And then the E, the last E in service is excellence. You cannot afford to render service in mediocrity. You can't. Mediocrity is an abuse of your ability. And rendering mediocre service is that you really don't understand what service is about. Because service ought to be excellent. Service is about paying attention to details, about crossing your T's and dotting your I's. You are intentional. You are excellent. You don't leave room for mediocrity or average. No, you're excellent. The one who must serve must do service with excellence. Otherwise, don't even bother. Don't serve with mediocrity. Don't serve as average. No. That's you throwing a jab or a spite at service, because service has to be excellent. If Joseph was serving in mediocrity, do you think Potiphar would have noticed? If Joseph was serving in average, do you think the jailer would have noticed? No, nobody noticed mediocrity. Nobody noticed average. They notice excellence. And that's why your service must be excellent. As you serve, whatever capacity with which you serve, it must be excellent. It's excellence or nothing. Excellence or nothing. So if you cannot serve in excellence, don't even serve at all. That way. No, when it comes to service, at all, it doesn't come in. It's either it's excellent or you don't do it at all. Not okay, let's just manage. No, no, no. You don't manage when it comes to service. You give excellence. You do excellence. Right? You live, breathe, talk excellence when it comes to service. You don't manage. So this is what service represents: sacrifice, empathy, responsibility, value, intentional, character, excellence. This, my friend, is service. And this is what we expect of everyone moving forward, to serve, and to do it the way it should be done. Do it the way it should be done. You know, if you look at Genesis chapter 4, you recognize that both Cain and Abel, they offered sacrifice. Yes, they did. So it wasn't like, oh, Cain did not offer, but it wasn't service unto God. Right? He was to God, but it wasn't service unto God because it wasn't excellent. It wasn't intentional. There's no value in it. He didn't take responsibility for it. Right? It didn't come as a sacrifice. So God didn't accept it. And God came and told him in Genesis 4 verse 6, he says, if thou doest well, shall thou not be accepted? So there's a service you render that is not accepted. And the goal of this conversation is for you not to be rendering those kind of service. No, you should render service that will be accepted. You know, in Romans 12:1, it says, I beseech you therefore now, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. So there's a reasonable service. There's a reasonable service. And anything that is not reasonable is unreasonable. It's not going to be considered as service. So you can't just do anything and say, oh, I'm serving. No, there are metrics to measure if it's a reasonable service. Otherwise, it's classified as unreasonable service. You know, in the parable of the sower, it said some seeds fell on the ground. Birds came and picked it up. Some fell among rocks. They grew up and thorns picked them up, right? Some fell on not too good grounds, and the sun scorched it, right? They tried to grow, but they had no roots in them, and they died out. And then there were those who fell on the good soil. And on the good soil, they produced 30-fold, 60-fold, and 100-fold, right? But take note, the farmer was sowing seeds on the bad ground, the hard ground, among thorns and good soil. That should let you know that your service should be the one that you put on good soil. Not just on any place, but on good soil. Are you getting this? So you must make up your mind. And if I'm going to serve, I'm going to give you my all. I'm going to give you my best. I'm going to serve and put my service on good soil. Does this make sense? Do you understand this now? Great. Now, 3 things about service. Number 1, selfless. Every service is selfless, which means you think less of yourself as you engage in service. So the goal is not you. The focus is not you. You are selfless when it comes to service, right? You are selfless. It's not about what do I gain? What's in it for me? What do I stand to benefit? No, you are more about what do I give? How do I help? How do I contribute? You are selfless. There's less of self in service. The second thing about service is there's more of others. Because now that there's less of you, then there should be more of others. You're serving others. Jesus washed the feet of his disciples and he encouraged them to do the same. Serve others. And he said the greatest among you will be the servant. So there must be more for others. For your service, there must be more for others. Less for you, more for others. How can I give? How can I contribute? How can I impact? How can I support more for others in your service and less of yourself? The third thing about service is the attainment of the goal. What's the goal we want to attain? What's the bottom line in all of this? What's the end game in all of this? Service is for the attainment of a goal. Right? We want to see people become all that they can be. You see, the end goal of what we do at Upgrade is to help you to become the best version of you. Right? You know, just as your mobile phones, they bring in a new version every year, the same way your life should evolve a new version of you every year. So it cannot be like an iPhone 4 in 2025. It shouldn't make sense. It should have evolved into an iPhone 16 in 2025. The same way, you as a human being, you should evolve. So the end goal, the attainment of the goal for us in Upgrade, that anyone who encounters us, a version of them that they never knew existed or could exist, emerges. Just like how the butterfly emerged out of the caterpillar. So it's all about evolving. So the attainment of the goal is very critical when it comes to service. What's the end goal? All of this service is to arrive at that goal. And the attainment of the goal for us at Upgrade is to see that you become the best version of you. And there are two traits of service. Anywhere you find this trait, you know that these people are involved with service. Two traits. Number one, faithfulness. Number two, diligence. These two traits are found in anyone who's truly engaged in service. There's faithfulness, there's diligence. Now you see in the story of the talents, right? The master said, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." Good and faithful servant. Faithfulness, diligence, right? The master didn't tell them what to do when he gave them the talents. Their diligence told them what to do. And their faithfulness ensured that they did it and they had results and they were waiting to be accountable. So the two traits you find with anyone who's engaged in service of whatever capacity, you see faithfulness, you see diligence. If these two things are missing, that's not truly service. That's not. Because you see, service, like we defined, is the giving up of yourself faithfully towards the attainment of a goal. So giving up yourself faithfully. So the attribute of service is faithfulness and diligence. Giving up of yourself faithfully towards the attainment of a goal. That's diligence. Without the expectation of reward. The one goal of service is to be told, well done. See, well done is not for everybody. Oh. No, it's not for everybody. Well done is for people who are truly engaged in service, who have truly given it their sweat, blood, and tears. That's well done. People who have given it their all, withholding back nothing. Well done. The master told his servants, well done. Well done. So the one goal of service is to have done well. To have done well. You know, scripture tells us that do not be weary in well-doing. Galatians 6:9. Do not be weary in well-doing, for in due season you would reap if you faint not. So there is a well done that comes as a result of your service. Are you getting this? Now, there are four popular kinds of service. Four of them. And I'm going to tell you all four and explain them to you so you can understand and you can be able to pick out them when you see it amongst people. First on the list, eye service. Yeah, these are the people who would show up like they are serving, but they are not actually serving. They're doing eye service. They're trying to impress, to say, oh, yes, we are also doing this. No, 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 no. That's eye service. And a lot of people have subscribed to eye service. To show up, to be there, to take picture, to do a video, they'll put on their status, eye service. But they are not really committed to the process of service. But they are doing eye service, showing up as though they are doing the work, whereas they're doing nothing. It's eye service. Top on the list, eye service. Next to eye service is lip service. They talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and do nothing. All talk, no work. Lip service. Yes, I'm going to do this. Yes, we're going to do that. Yes, lip service. All talk, no action. And this is why I tell people all the time that they should learn to malt. More action, less talk. Right? More action, less talk. Malt. Right? And when it comes to service, that's the way to go. More action, less talk. But for those who are experts at lip service, it's always more talk, no action. More talk, no action. They keep talking, they keep talking, they keep saying, and they are doing nothing. That's lip service. And then there's another category. Next after that is the face service. Face service. They put their face everywhere. Everywhere things are happening, they put their face everywhere to show that, oh, they are part of it. They are doing this. Doing nada. Doing nothing. Nehi. Nothing. They're doing nothing. But I'm doing face service. Just to show up, just to be in the picture, being behind the scene, just be around. So people just feel like, oh, this person is participating. Face service. I do nothing. I'm not actually part of the process. No, but they show up. They like to do like, oh, yes, we are here. We're making this happen. They're not doing anything. It's face service. So there's the eye service, there's the lip service, there's the face service, but the fourth service is the most important. And that's what we encourage through this conversation. And that's the faithful service. Scripture tells us that it is expected in stewardship that a man be found faithful. Faithful. Faithful service is the way to go. Faithful service. The master told the servants, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Faithful service is the way to go, guys. Faithful service is the real kind of service. All the others are counterfeits. Faithful service is the real service that counts you in, but it's not a counterfeit. The others are counterfeits. Eye service, lip service, face service, they are all counterfeiting. But faithful service counts you in and fits you in and is not counterfeit in. Are you getting this? It's faithful service. So it's expected that you render faithful service wherever you find yourself. Not eye service, not lip service, not face service, but faithful service. See, the mindset for service is that you see opportunity in difficulty. Is that you see redirection in rejection. Is that you see joy in chaos. That's the mindset of service. And that's the mindset you should have as you engage in service. You see opportunity in the difficulty. You see redirection in the rejection. You see joy in chaos. That's the mindset of service that you should have. As I'm serving, when I get challenges, I see feedback, I see difficulties, I see obstacles, I have another mind, I have another perspective through which I look at those things. That's what helps my service. So I'm not seeing it as something that is against me. I'm saying that something that is working out for my good. Are we still together? Is this making sense? Right? Are you learning from this? You see, I always like to tell people this, and I hope that this helps you. That the reward from service is not what you get. The reward from service is who you become. You know, from what we defined service to be earlier, we say that it is the giving up of yourself faithfully towards the attainment of a goal without expectation of reward. So the reward is not what you expect, but the reward still comes. So the reward from service is not what you get, it's who you become. Because the whole idea of service is your becoming. And that's why we said that nothing helps refine your becoming like service. So the goal of service is not necessarily what you get. The reward of service is not what you get, it's who you become. It's who you become. It's who you become. No wonder Paul could say that I am what I am by the grace of God. I am what I am by the grace of God. Is who he had become through his service. He wrote to third of the New Testament, who he had become through service. So when it comes to service, it's about who you become. It's about who you become. Right? And you see, in the parable of the talents, follow me closely, guys. In the parable of the talents, it depicts service in its whole entirety. A master had servants. He was going for a far journey. He called the servants and gave them talents according to their abilities. To one, he gave 5 talents. To another, he gave 2 talents. To another, he gave 1 talent according to their ability. This is the description of service, right? And then the servants went ahead. They were diligent. They were faithful. One among them did nothing. He went to hide his talents. The one who was given 5 worked with the 5 and got 5 more. The one who was given 2 worked with the 2 and got 2 more. The one who was given 1 could have worked with the 1 and still gotten 1 more, but he did nothing. He did not engage in service. I say this all the time. You don't lose when you serve. You don't lose. You don't lose when you serve. You would never lose when you serve. In fact, you only lose when you don't serve. You never lose when you serve. See, with service, you must be dice. D-I-C-E. You must be dice. And by dice, I mean you must be diligent, you must be intentional, you must be consistent, and you must be excellent. In service, you have to dice. You have to be diligent in your service. Remember, we said the 2 traits of service is faithfulness and diligence, right? You have to be diligent in your service. Scripture says, Proverbs 22:29, seest thou a man who is diligent in his deeds, he will stand before kings and not mean men. So with service, there must be diligence. With service. With service, there must be intentionality. And I told you, you don't serve anyhow. There's no random act of kindness. It should be intentional acts of kindness. It must be intentional. It's part of the service. It has to be intentional. It can't be random. The C is that it has to be consistent. Consistent service. Consistent service. And it has to be done in excellence. There's no room for mediocrity when it comes to service. There's no room for average when it comes to service. It has to be excellent. Excellence or nothing. It has to be excellent. And you see, the heart of service is the one that communicates and expresses responsibility, empathy, and generosity. I'll say that again. The heart of service is the one that communicates and expresses responsibility, empathy, and generosity. There's the heart of service, where you know that I'm doing this because I'm taking responsibility for it. I'm doing this because I have empathy. I'm doing this because I have generosity to give. That's the heart of service. The heart of service. Responsibility, empathy, generosity. You see, service is a universal principle that works anywhere in the world. And like you already know, principles are universal, experiences are peculiar. Service is a universal principle. In all walks of life, service is regarded, honored, and valued. It's a universal principle. In the different faiths in the world, service is a key practice. It's a key practice. It's a universal principle. Right? And then there is the act of service. You see, in one of the love languages, one of the 5 love languages, service, the act of service is one of them. You know, Gary Chapman, who postulated the 5 love languages, talked about words of affirmation, quality time, physical touch, gifts, and act of service. That act of service is a love language. You communicate and express your love through acts of service. So you see, service itself is a love language. So there are 2 things you need to know about service. There is the heart of service. Empathy, responsibility, generosity. The heart of service. And then there's the act of service, which is about love, which communicates love. So you see, service is something that is very, very essential. It's one of those life essentials. Service. The heart of service. The act of service. The heart of service talks about responsibility, empathy, generosity. The act of service talks about love. And the truth is, everyone responds to service. Everyone. Everyone responds to service. Everyone. And you see, the greatest disservice you can do to yourself is to not be involved in service. Did you understand that? The greatest disservice you can do to yourself is to not be involved in service. That's the greatest disservice. Not being involved in service is the greatest disservice that you can do to yourself. And you see, Jesus said that the greatest should become the servant. That's why I told you that greatness is achieved through service. You want to achieve greatness? Begin service. That's how you achieve greatness. Greatness is achieved through service and not any other way, through service. See this. Nothing uplifts a person like service. Nothing uplifts a person like service. And no service is a waste. It may not be recognized or rewarded. It's not a waste. You know, Mordecai rendered service to and revealed the plot of the assassination of the king, and it was recorded. He wasn't rewarded, but it was recorded. Over time, the king could not sleep, and he asked for the book of the Chronicles to be opened. And the book where the part where Mordecai's deed was recorded, he saw it and he asked, has anything been done for this person? And they said nothing. And then Haman was just coming into the court and he said, Haman, what should be done for the one whom the king decides to honor? And Haman went ranting, saying everything, thinking that, oh, who else can the king want to honor apart from me? And then when it was done, the king said, everything you have said, do not miss out on anyone. Do all of this for Mordecai. See, no service is a waste. Service is like sowing and reaping, right? You may not reap where you sow, but you always reap what you sow. Are you getting it? You may not reap where you sow, but you always reap what you sow. So service is a seed that you sow. It's a seed that you sow. You see, Joseph was a person of service. In his father's house, he was serving. He rendered quality service in his father's house. In Potiphar's house, he continued the same practice of service. In the prison, he continued the same practice of service. In the palace, he continued the same practice of service. That's why I told you that service, there is consistency with service. It's not a one-off. It's not a one-off. There's consistency with service. And Joseph was a practical example of that, of the consistency in service. I would say that, how do you think that the butler got to know Joseph? It's through service. It's through service. Joseph was serving in the prison. And then he came and saw them both depressed and dejected and down. And like, why? What's happening? You had dreams? No problem. Tell me, it's God that gives interpretation. I'll help you. Service. He got out of prison. 2 years passed, he forgot. And then Pharaoh had a dream. Pharaoh did not bring out Joseph from prison because he liked his face. He brought out Joseph from prison because Joseph had service that he needed to render, that no one else could do. It was all the magicians and the astrologers could not interpret the dream. You see, the more you render, the more you become a person of service, the more it opens opportunities for you. The more it opens opportunities for you. See, nothing can help you to achieve greatness like service. Nothing can help you rewrite your story like service. Service helps you to rewrite your story. People may have given up on you, but as you start to serve, you gradually start to rewrite your story. See, the fulfillment, satisfaction, and remuneration that comes with service can never come any other way. I'll say that again. The fulfillment, the satisfaction, the remuneration that comes with service cannot come any other way. Can't come any other way. Because there's a sense of fulfillment you have as you're serving. There's a sense of satisfaction you get as you're serving. There's a kind of remuneration that only comes through service. Joseph became prime minister through service. He didn't lobby for it. He didn't campaign. He was not even an Egyptian. The remuneration that comes from service cannot be gotten any other way. Cannot be gotten any other way. Cannot be gotten through lip service, cannot be gotten through eye service, cannot be gotten through face service, can only be gotten through faithful service. And you see, Mahatma Gandhi says this, and it's so true. You will always find yourself when you lose yourself in the service of others. Yes, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. And that's why I told you that service is about less of self and more of others. And that's the best way you find yourself, when you lose yourself in the service of others. See, love is an action in service. That's why service is part of the love language, because love is an action in service. See, you earn success based on service. You earn success based on service to others and not at the expense of others. Your success comes based on your service to others and not at the expense of others. See this, guys. Never forget this. When you render service, you put yourself in the position and the opportunity for greatness, for great wealth, for great return, for great satisfaction, for great reputation, and for great joy. You put yourself in a position and the opportunity for all of these things. But see, service makes the difference. It makes a difference, a huge difference. And service is what life is all about. The whole essence of life is about service. It's about your contribution. It's about your donation, not necessarily your duration. Because they say life is measured in its donation, not in its duration. Your donation is about your contribution. So you need to become a person of service for you to live your best life ever. Does this make sense? Have you learned something? I hope this would help you moving forward as you go about your life and as you practice the culture of service. So, guys, as we wrap up today, I'd like to remind you, like I always do all the time, there are three things that will happen for you in this new week. Number one, increased voice of God. Number two, open heavens over your life. And number three, more angelic activities in all that you do. Remember, there's always more on the upgrade side of life. And that's why we encourage you to leave good behind so that you can upgrade. And what better way for you to upgrade than to become a person of service? You don't lose when you are a person of service. In fact, you gain much more when you are a person of service. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you. And feel free to share this with your friends, your family, your loved ones. And then share also your testimony of how you have been transformed through service. I like to hear it. And I can't wait to see you again on another exciting episode on the Upgrade Live with Mr. Upgrade. Thank you so much. God bless you.